afternoon and welcome, everybody. Interrupted by a ghost voice coming through my machine there. Uh, my name's David Robertson. I'm a Chief Information Security Officer. I've been working as the CISO, as it's called, for around 30 universities and colleges in Scotland. There are two of us who do it for about 7 or 8 years now. And what I like to do is to share what we've learned from that. And if I can answer any questions in relation to that, share the responses with yourselves. I won't go into some boring CV or anything like that because, quite frankly, I usually feel like switching off and switching into Netflix when people do that. But I've been doing cybersecurity stuff for a very, very long time. Before it was even called cybersecurity, it was I was working in what was called information sharing between, you know, exactly. It was, yep. It's been through many iterations. The bottom line is, though, it's a pretty good idea to make sure that your computers are secure. Now, in today's rapidly evolving cyber threat landscape, organizations have to adapt to much more structured and dynamic approaches to strengthen their cybersecurity posture. And that's what I'm here to do today. So I'm just going to move on to close that survey down for me, and I'm going to move on to, whoops, our first slide. I'll be talking about, and this is mainly for larger organizations as well, so apologies if you're in a small organization, but don't worry, I have not forgotten about you. We have got measures in here for smaller to medium-sized organizations as well, which should be helpful. But this is to give you the concept of what I call looking back through the telescope, which is if it's good for big, complicated organizations, it's also good for smaller organizations as well. And if there's good practice out there, it should be relevant to you. I'll try and keep this as well at a pace which people, and there are one or two of you who are relatively new to cybersecurity topics, and there's some of you who are quite advanced in cybersecurity. So I'll try and keep the language common, and I won't be locking it all behind lots of acronyms and stuff like that, because that's another thing I detest as much as online CV chanting. So we'll be talking about pooling together risk and maturity of an organization in relation to cybersecurity. And we'll also be talking about how that can be joined up with actually proving things rather than ticking boxes on an assessment. So that's going to be the main introduction to this. What I will do following on from that is I'm going to share a couple of materials. One is for small organizations to medium organizations about just securing your device. Very straightforward, 10 simple steps, 8 simple steps for securing your organization. Again, for small to medium and large organizations, very straightforward. And then a larger, more comprehensive run through, if you like, towards the end of this, which relates to how you actually look at this in detail without going into what the settings are on your virtual private networks, etc. Well, not unless any of you want to, in which case, please feel free to contribute as much as you like. I'll be getting myself a cup of tea. So, what we have here is that we look to standards to help us to define how well we're doing with information and cybersecurity. Many of you will have heard of the Cyber Essentials certification, which is a baseline qualification, but there are many others with different purposes. There is the ISO 27001 framework, which looks very much at how you manage your information and how you manage your policies and procedures. There is the public sector cyber resilience framework, which is an absolute stonker of a 480 question with 6 sub-questions within many of those questions. Assessment, which is the most thorough, wide-reaching assessment framework of which we are aware, and that includes Gartner. for a large digital environment, and that's what we distill things down from. I'm a practitioner of both ISO and PSCRF. Um, and I'm trying to bring forward the idea that actually cybersecurity is modular. It's role-based, it's about people. It's not necessarily about the technology. The technology is supporting the people. And I will hope to give you a few hints and tips and clues going forward of how to approach that. And maybe by the end of the session, you'll feel comfortable that you would actually be able to secure your own devices if that's within your gift, or even look to your organization and say, it would be good for us to follow this path. Oh, there we go. So where does it all start? Well, it all starts with pre-assessment planning. That's working out, how big is my organization? How many devices has it got? How big is the digital estate, as I'm going to call it, which is all your IT stuff, and everything that's connected to it. Um, and it's to emphasize that the way that we make progress on this is to do something which is called following a show, prove, improve cycle, which is, show me what it is you're doing. Okay, prove it. Give me the evidence. Or allow me to look at the evidence so that I can be confirmed that you're doing what you say you're doing and the technology is doing what it says it's supposed to do. And always looking to improve around that to make things a little bit better. So it's a cycle rather than a checklist. It's a methodology, I think they like to call it. I like to call it doing assurance, which is what I do. And it's all about prioritizing the areas that need the biggest focus. So we'll go through the 17 lovely things that you need to know about cybersecurity, and we'll take it from there, and you can maybe choose which one's most important to your organization right now. Anyway, we're also going to be talking about things like visual maturity maps and metrics and dashboards, which are basically having a few visuals to show you exactly where you stand and making them understandable for other people rather than them being bedded into um, auditing logs on computers or in areas which people find difficult to understand, and making sure that any policies that you do have are readable for everybody and not hard to understand so that people can actually use them rather than there be a cybersecurity incident and somebody being handed a 120-page document saying, right, this is what you do now. That goes down really well. So, what's the purpose here? Well, assurance, it empowers organizations to enhance their cybersecurity resilience, as we call it. That's the chances of you either not getting attacked, or if you do experience a cyber incident, dealing with it well, minimizing the damage which is done, and also recovering more quickly. And it's done through two routes, if you like. You've got your structured assessments and audits, which are a fun experience for everybody. I've got to say, we have parties all the time. It's always done to a good theme of drum and bass music. Um, but also what I find more constructively through tabletop exercises, which is where we actually go through a real life scenario and check with yourselves what it means to you. And what we do is, instead of taking that, coming in with a clipboard approach, or what we should do is we should look at, okay, what do we need rather than just following a specific standard? So there are plenty of standards out there. Just mention a few here. You've got Cyber Essentials, you've got ISO 27001, the PSCRF. There's also the European NIS directive. It's now on iteration 2. I was going, what is he talking about? They're a huge, it's basically a bumper bundle of information on what you should be doing, and in some areas what you should comply with to make sure that you can trade and work properly with the EU in this respect. So it's got a lot of data protection in there. Or in the NIST, um, well, there are two. There's the American NIST CAF, which is very much if you want to work in the United States, you'll learn this one. You've got the UK GDPR as well, which is out there. There are dozens of them. And I'm sure that that has left you leaving excited. It's not necessary to do all of them. In some cases, not it's not necessary to do any of them apart from the compulsory elements, which you will be told what to follow and what to comply with if you're having dealings with a certain organization. So what I'm basically saying is standards, they're big and they're scary, yes, and they are not looked forward to, fair enough. But actually, they are useful and they have a purpose. But what happens is, of course, that purpose isn't advertised. People want you to follow their standard, pay the money, get their consultants in. We don't want that. We want to be able to look at our organization and say, right, how mature are we? How safe are we? That is absolutely the first thing, always, ever. We want to align with industry standards where we have to, where it is appropriate, but not align with every single standard that there is there, or necessarily every scope or every part of the standard. We want to be able to identify vulnerabilities and risks. That's the most important thing. As far as your operations is concerned, that's making yourself safe, or at least pointing out the bits that are requiring work. And we want to drive continuous improvement. We want all of those concerned with your cybersecurity to feel that actually they're making a difference and they're making a positive difference. And because things are always changing and attack vectors and what have you are always evolving, basically the bad guys are always trying new stuff and new ways to try and break your systems and steal your stuff. But in reality, we have to update our defenses to match that and hopefully to foil them. Now, I'm going to start off with one thing which is very fundamental to this, which is, does it work? Well, in Scotland, the HEFE sector, and that's where I work, the higher and further education sector. Sorry, universities and colleges. There you go. I'm starting with the acronyms already. Um, have got the highest resilience rating in the entire public sector, and that's in line with your blue light services. It's superior to an awful lot of governance and government departments, including the Ministry of Defence, who it is well advertised, cannot pass cyber essentials because submarines go away for more than 2 weeks at a time and they can't patch their systems. Uh, all of these things sound ludicrous, but taking an approach where you are looking at your organization and making sure it's as strong as possible really, really works, is what I'm saying here. And what we're looking at today is we're hoping that some of you will have at least some knowledge of risk assurance or management within your organization. You may have all of the above. You maybe have a bit of IT or security knowledge. And if not, you've got something in between. So it's not a completely basic course. What does an integrated assessment look like? Well, it's a bit complicated, but it starts off really simple, and we're going to keep this way. There are 5 principles that you always follow. That is, you want to follow this circle at the bottom here. You want to detect stuff, you want to protect against it, you want to manage it. If something goes horribly wrong, you want to recover, and at the end of it, you want to respond and learn from it so it doesn't happen again. So that circle is up there just for you to think, yeah, that makes sense. Um, we're trying to, yes, tabletop exercises are really, really good for smaller organizations, but for larger organizations, you've got to take the structured approach. Why? If you've got more than 500 of a workforce, your estate's getting a bit complicated. And unless you are following a templated system, if you like, which is everybody uses the same stuff and the same equipment and the same applications and software and does the same things. And let's be fair, once you get to around 500 for an organization, you start doing more diverse things, usually geographically. And it may also be, completely different functions that need different software and need, a different approach. Um, for any assessment, whatever's going on, even if it's a very, very small one, like Cyber Essentials, it'd be you've got to understand what it is you're actually doing. So that's going back to defining what we call scoping, which is just which part are you looking at. Um, Make sure that you are actually doing a bit of field work to understand what is where, and making sure that you're performing the right way to execute it. I'm going to keep on emphasizing this. Assessment is not the only way to do this, and there are better ways to do it. And tabletop exercises or instant response evaluation are far more relevant for certain parts of the assessment and insurance process than any assurance program can ever be. Why? Because you're having that conversation, you're having that engagement, not just with the technical teams, but also with people that use the technology. So afterwards, you start looking at, oh, what am I going to get out of that? Well, you should get some actions that come out of it. So, we could do things better here, or we've got some things that ain't really needing fixing. In fact, they're pretty good. And just to make a note of that, and what we call KPIs and key RAIs, which is key performance indicators and key risk indicators. In other words, what's working well, what needs to work better, where do our risks lie, and what are we going to do about it? Hey, so how does that process work? Uh, it's usually for the start, it is through some sort of an assessment process, although it can be done over the telephone with somebody actually guiding that in a structured way. And that's where we look at who are you, what do you do? And I'm saying we, I mean assessors in general. We've got to know you. You might have internal assessors within your organization, you might have internal auditors, etc., but they still have to check what it is they're going to be looking at, who they're going to be talking to. You want to as well define what's called the scope. In other words, am I going to be doing everything? Am I going to be doing sampling because we use very, very similar kit? Or am I going to have to do 4 or 5 different areas one at a time? It just depends. All organizations are different. And then you schedule interviews basically from the back of that once you've done that bit of work and say, right, can we have a chat in 2 or 3 weeks' time and look at the specific part of the organization? Uh, in the execution part, what you would do is for some things really lend themselves for assessment and assurance. And when it's looking at monitoring and it's looking at processes, that generally lies better with doing an assessment. But if it's action based, and I'm talking about incident response, incident management, actually doing a run through of a backup and restore procedure, that's so much better with a tabletop exercise. Same with training. It makes sense to actually try and do that in an engaged way, not just on the online, oh, you've got to repeat this every year because it's your cybersecurity training, because people don't like that very much. They get very bored. And there's also that opportunity to do role-based scenario engagement, which can actually be a bit of fun, where mixed groups go through maybe an instant response, maybe a horrible incident unfolding in front of them, or lessons learned from a horrible incident that's happened elsewhere. And I'll to mention librarians really like the fact that we can go through the British Library scenario with them to make sure. I think when it comes to talking about what to do in the charity sector, you've done very, very well so far, but there have been some really, really big hits against you, especially Sam H. which is actually the reason why I'm here, because I thought that was just absolutely terrible. It was just wrong. What do you want out of it? Well, like I've mentioned, you do want a report out that says, here are some things that we want to do. You also want to be able to keep a track of that. This does not have to be chapter and verse. It can be an action list. It can be that we just know what our top risks are and what we're going to do about it. But there should always be a bit of a feedback loop there so that people can talk about it and that people can actually discuss how that engagement looks. So it may be thought that if you have a cyber attack, it'll all come back on when IT have fixed it, and therefore I don't really have to concern myself. Well, that's a very, very common conception. And in many cases, if it's just an outage, that's exactly what people do because that's the only thing they can do. But if it's an ongoing cyber attack, not constantly asking, is it fixed yet? Is it fixed yet? Actually switching off your device, closing it, walking away until you're told it's time to use it again. Simple things can make all the difference. Okay, so what are these lovely 17 modular areas? I'm going to show a scorecard which has got them all linked out and mapped out. And don't worry, all of this is in the study materials that we're going to, I'm saying study materials, support materials. I do apologize. I have been working in colleges and universities for too long. Uh, it's it's about asset management. Where's my stuff? How can you protect something if you don't know where it is and who's doing stuff with it? You really can't. And that's called asset management. And it's not just about your own device. It can be about your servers. It can be about mobile devices as you use them and as people go about. So know where your stuff is. Access control. I don't want people doing stuff with my stuff unless they're meant to. It's it's that straightforward. Get your access controls in place. In the recent Marks and Spencer's incident and what's well publicized, also the co-op, it was about access control. Basically, people were phoning up and saying, oh, could you change my password? But they weren't the person concerned and it wasn't being checked. And they were able to socially engineer their way into the organization. And they were very well prepared. They had a lot of information about individuals within the organization and to allow that to happen. If you have got multi-factor authentication in place, for example, as an access control, stopping people getting in and out, they can change their password and what have you, but they ain't getting in. It's as simple as that because they've got to check with something else that isn't their password. Very, very straightforward way to block the second stage of attacks. And it's very, very useful. Incident management. Incident management, oh dear, what am I going to do when something does happen? Well, practice it before something horrible happens. You have a fire drill so you don't die in a fire. You want to do a cybersecurity tabletop exercise before you have a cybersecurity incident. It's not much use after, and it's certainly no use during. That's all I'm saying. Knowing what to do is absolutely the best way to approach this because you can't plan every single thing that's going to happen in a cybersecurity accident. You can be in a building where suddenly the doors stop working and you can't actually get in and out. You could just walk into work and all your stuff's gone. All of your information is gone. It may be years and years that you've built up. It's just gone. So it goes from there are all manner of implications because in the last 25 years, I know very few people who do not rely substantially on computers and the applications that are on them for their day-to-day work. And yet the highest risk one of the highest risks anyway to any organization, certainly in the top five, usually in the top three, is that you will have a nasty cyber attack like Marquis. That's one thing that you've got to bear in mind. Why? Because they are so common and because they cause more disruption. If you're a larger, organization, if you lose a warehouse, for example, you might have other warehouses and you can work by it. If you lose all of your digital estate, all of your computers stop working at the same time, by the crikeys, it's horrible. And there's only so much macrame and twist you can do. So we want to map these things into that cycle that I mentioned earlier on. We want to always be looking at, well, how do we manage this? Do we protect against it? How we detect stuff? How do we respond? How do we recover? Okay, I've mentioned that we do the WHOS method, and everybody should always consider what I'm doing here. Can you show me? Ask the technical teams if you're non-technical. If you are asked as a technical operative, be free to show people what it is you're doing if they want to know. And so that you can assure people, we use the word prove, but it's really assure people that things are going smoothly, things are correct. And if there are auditors in, they're going to ask you to show them stuff, but they're not going to ask you to prove it. They're not going to ask you to evidence it in an awful lot of cases. And if they do, it's not really in a meaningful way. So that's where we're getting to, trying to get a picture, which includes the risks and the evidence as we go forward. Um, we use metrics and trends from to inform the cyber planning process, but that's not of much use if you don't have information to base it on. So you've got to have that information based on, like I say, whether it's an assessment or whether it's just through knowledge, it matters not one whit. There are loads of tools you can use. You also want to close any gaps that you have through a measured process. You want to know on the technical side, right, if we convert all this to a VPN and we have no network, then is that going to help? Is that going to be more secure? Is that going to be less secure? Are we better having stuff on premise and securing it ourselves and guarding it ourselves, or using other people's computers? Who knows? The argument still waves to and fro, but you can prove it if you know what the risks are in both areas and you can take an informed choice. Right, so what does that mean? Right, this looks like it's going back the way. Okay, what we will look at in any initial focus areas are your asset management, access control, and patching stuff. All right, so where's my stuff? Can I keep people in and out of it? And by the way, is it up to date and working? Very, very simple concepts. But what we also want to do is look at, in all times, we want to prioritize risk management, staff awareness, and training. Why? Well, it's pretty straightforward. The first line of defense in any organization are the people that work there. It doesn't matter if it's just one person or it's 100 people. You really, or even 1,000, you really want everybody to be aware of, here are a few good things that you can do to make sure things are safe. Now, I mentioned, sorry, it's a bit of repetition here, but it shouldn't be. I hope it's not putting you off here. But you want realistic exercises tailored to roles. It's all well and good. People switch off very, very quickly from IT and cybersecurity if they're not part of it and it's not relevant to them. And you want to make an exercise work for the people that are actually engaged with it. You don't want to be just talking to the same teams all the time and telling them what to do because they all work in IT. That's not helping anybody because actually an awful lot of the work which is done, which would prevent an incident from happening, can come from the people that use the systems, being able to recognize social engineering attempts, being able to recognize phishing emails. I've included a few basic pointers for this from the previous exercise that we did that just covers all those basics, phishing, make sure you've checked that your accounts aren't broken, haven't been compromised, that sort of thing. Very, very quick, clean stuff that you can do to make sure that everything's hunky-dory for you as an individual. But in reality, if an exercise does not resonate with you and the way that you work, you're not going to grasp it. It's not going to mean much to you. And cybersecurity doesn't really mean much to a lot of people because it's not their job and it's not their expertise. Also, best to try and make sure that it's relevant to the organization. If you're working in one area, which I don't know, is in retail, for example, you don't face the same risks as somebody who works at a college or university, nor does your organization, nor somebody who works in Her Majesty's Armed Forces. So, or the police. So it's always got to be, if you're doing these exercises or you're actually looking at an organization, what's the context here? That's why I emphasize in scoping, what do we do? Because that's more important in many cases than what technology that do we use. Um, what do you want? You want those assessment reports, yes, but you want clear roadmaps for improvement. And you want to have those follow-up sessions, not just, oh, I'm going to come back in a year and I'm going to ask you the same questions and ask you, have you done it yet? Have you done it yet? Oh, hey, well, this has definitely gone back the way, excuse me. All right. So we've gone into why we should be doing the risk management, why we should be doing the assessments, why we should be doing looking at our areas. That's it. That's the introduction to what I'm going to show you. It's common to all. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go through a few resources which we provided. There's going to be two pieces of guidance for smaller to medium-sized businesses and one to larger businesses as well, which shows it is big and it is scary. I'm not going to say otherwise, but we're going to work through or look at the way that this can really, really help an organization going forward. Now, at this point, before I move away from this introduction, does anybody have any questions or any opportunities for me to improve? No, we're all good. In that case, here comes the dodgy bit, Robin. I'm going to be switching screen sharing here, so please help me if everything breaks. Okay, stopping sharing now. And oh, right, that one's done. Right,
Oh,
we will
yeah,
start with, can you hear me?
yeah, all good.
Okay, we'll start with securing my device. It should come up. Get that down. And
I've shared a link to all the resources in the chat if anybody wants to be on it on their own screen at the same time, but I'm sure
oh,
David will screen share and go through it.
you're a superstar. Thank you very much. Now, where's the meeting? There it is. Right. Recording share. There's my green button. It's all good. Everything okay in the chat? Uh, thanks for sharing that. Yep. And sharing now should be. Yay! Has anything come up that you can see? Looking very much like a bit of paper. Yep, just saying securing my device. Okay. I'm going to scroll through this, but I'm going to go through it. You've got a copy of it anyway. Uh, most of us use as a device some sort of laptop. It may be Microsoft-based device, it may be an Apple-based device, it may be a MacBook, whatever. Um, it really doesn't matter in the scheme of things what you're doing here, what you use here, what you follow. If you follow just a few simple procedures. So we've got 8 stages to securing your device. For phones, you can actually do the same as well. If you do most of your work from mobile phone, you can follow most of these steps as well. So why is it important? You're protecting your personal information. Your laptop is really likely to contain lots of personal information, such as your name, address, and email address, passwords, and financial information. It may be hidden, but it will be there. And if this information falls into the wrong hands, it can be used for identity theft, or other fraudulent activities. Basically, let's get bad guys play with your machine. Preventing data breaches, that's basically somebody stealing your data. And some of that can be very, very sensitive. Some of it can be used to deepfake you. Some of it can be used just to allow somebody to impersonate you to the point where they can get what they want from you, whether it's information, whether it's organizational secrets, whether it's your accounts, whether it's your bank accounts, and otherwise, all of those things. Is that a little bit small, by the way, or is it readable? So, okay, if I put it up on the bigger screen, I might be able to make. Oh no, if I do that, it's going to break it. Right, so let's just go. Right, that might be a bit better for you. Okay. Uh, We also want to avoid malware and viruses, unless you work in the IT department and you play with them all day and you've got a sandbox, in which case you really want to see them and play with them because they are great fun and they can give you an absolute giggle. But they can infect your laptop through, we mention this all the time, you probably hear it ad infinitum. Do not click on links and email attachments because most of them, or many of them, are the way that people get into your organization. Well, of course they are. They're files, they're full of the perpetrators of malware. Many can be infected, and even perfectly legitimate emails can carry code which is not beneficial to your device. So again, and then that leads to, oh, bad guy gets to play with some of my stuff and breaks my computer. Ensuring the safety of your online accounts. And this is just making sure that you're the only one that can access your own online accounts, whether it's through your device, and because there are so many cloud applications, it is common. It's not recommended, but it's common for people to use similar passwords amongst an awful lot of the applications that they use. It could be your banking application. It could be, getting your dog license if you need a license. I can't remember if we do or don't anymore. But people tend to do that so that they can remember it. And so they don't have to write down 25 different passwords in a book, which doesn't help much because the book's never there when you need it. Okay, so let's look at the first one. What should you do? Everybody should regularly update antivirus and anti-malware software. In any electronic device that you're going to use over the internet, this should be in there as standard. You should have Defender ticking away in the background, and you actually have to switch it off for almost all operating systems. And that's, with no exception. You should have that. But more importantly, set it to run a full scan of your device on a regular basis. So it detects those viruses on your malware, and also set it to automatically update. It's very easy to forget, and you don't get the reminders sometimes. Why? Because they've got a list of viruses that they work with and all manner of other devices. That changes on a regular basis. You want it to be up to date, so they're getting the most recent ones. You also want to, if you do get an alert, do something about it. Most of these have actually got step-by-step instructions going forward, so you can just follow the prompts. But generally, if a virus has been detected, or activity has been detected, you have got the time when it's telling you to do it to actually fix it, so you can still use the internet as a resource to look for whatever solution there is there and use your other applications. Or you can use another device and follow the instructions that come, but it'll tell you what to do and it will help. Please, pretty please, with sugar on top, use a strong password. Use it as strong as you can. Uh, we get advice from the National Cybersecurity Centre. Oh, use a passphrase or use a password that's familiar words that have got letters and numbers and exclamation marks popped in. It's not always very, very easy to remember that. And it's certainly very easy to mistype it in an emergency if you need it. Should you use the automatic secure password storage, which is already on your device? Yes, you should actually. If it's a good one, if it is a verified one. Microsoft lockers are actually quite good. But I think we put a list in here. But even if you go on the Have I Been Pwned site, it will say use Bitwarden, for example, which is a very, very common application.
For a minute there, I
Use
thought you were talking about browsers remembering your password there, David. Sorry.
No, that's bad. Browsers should be slapped for doing that, Baz. But no, if you've got in your application, you've got Bitwarden, you've got some form of locker, some form of password locker like the Microsoft lockers, then use them because they really, really do help. But do not go to, I don't know, a bizarre website which very kindly offers to share all that information in your cache on an unsecured Google browser, because you could lose it. So balance it off. But yes, use a strong password. The best ones are ones that are system generated. It would take thousands of years. Even when quantum computing comes in, it could take them all of 10 minutes to crack them. You're always looking for time. Always use multi-factor authentication. Two-factor is a minimum when you check it in. Why? Well, it's really, really hard to get both your authentication, your password and your username, and the tokens, if you like, or the means of getting two-factor authentication done. It's almost impossible. It breaks down so many attacks. I'm going to emphasize it's around 85% of attacks. If MFA is applied, it'll stop it. It won't go beyond 2 or 3 devices. It can't. Rare exceptions where very sophisticated hackers like the Lazarus Group are able to duplicate tokens, for example, but that's getting into very sophisticated territory. There's not much you can do if a very, very strong group goes after your device. Yes, also let everybody know that you expect there to be a good password in place for all your employees, all your team members. Make sure that if there is some form of preferred locker that you're using, then everybody uses it. Simple as that. And you'll often see this when you're typing in a password yourself anyway. It can be automated. It is automated on most of your applications, which is you'll be told to have a minimum number of characters and the use of uppercase letters and lowercase letters and symbols to stop it being easily guessed. Apparently, the head of the Kremlin did have a password which was Kremlin 1, and he got his computer hacked and he changed it to Kremlin 2. You must do better than this. It's as simple as that. You must. I think he even changed it. It's anecdotal, but it was definitely his device was hacked into, and that is what the perpetrators say they were able to do. Okay, sorry if I missed something here. Sorry, right. Number 3, switch your firewalls on. You try switching them off. Not easy. They're already there. But if you don't, we've got a wee list here on how to make sure that your firewalls are active. You may have a separate one, maybe the Avast ones, but the hand has been raised.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
Point 2B of the previous paragraph, passport
yeah,
expiration policies. I've
yes,
heard conflicting, depending on which cybersecurity person I hear talking to me, I hear conflicting advice on either, yes, implement a forced password change policy of every 6, 12, 3 months, weeks, days, whatever, or don't.
yes.
And which whoever gives me the information insists that their way is the way. So I wouldn't mind your thoughts on that, if that would be if that's all right.
My pleasure. It's very straightforward. It depends on your organization, where you work, and what you do. If you work in the banking industry or you work in a very secure area, you should be changing your password 6 months or a year maximum. You should also be using a secure approved approach to the management of your password materials, and you should have compulsory training. If you're working in with terminals and tills, you're going to have no choice. The bank will change your password for you every 6 months because that's the PCI DSS requirement. However, if you're working in, say you're working in a library, for example, if you've got a secure infrastructure already in place, then at time of breach, and if it's not in a, like I say, a Bitwarden type environment, then it should be every 2 years. I wouldn't go beyond that because passwords just wear out after a couple of years anyway, and people forget them. Or if they've got them logged in the cache, it becomes embedded a little bit and it's too easy to find. But a couple of years is absolutely fine. There are some that said never. That no, absolutely no. Is that fair enough? But for most
It
of
is,
us,
yes.
every year or couple of years is absolutely fine. If you work in a more secure sector, absolutely 6 months, year maximum. Okay. Um, left a wee bit of a guide here on how to basically switch on the Windows Defender firewall because that's the most common one. I've got a couple of extra firewalls which are on my device because I like to play with stuff. And most of them are pretty good. Your McAfee's, your Avast. There are loads of secure applications there. But on your device right now, you should be able to open your control panel, click Start, and find Windows Defender and switch it on. And that's in section 3. Just have a look at it. Very straightforward. You can. Next one, keep your operating system and software up to date. Okay, what is he talking about? Well, Windows is not necessarily the most secure application in the world. There are parts of it which have been mentioned in compromises worldwide. Okay, I'm joking here. Not much. I would be out of a job if there had never been a breach with Windows devices because everybody would use them and nobody would ever get cyber attacked. Out of date software. Why is it a problem? Because hackers stay awake and take notes. If they've broken something, if they've gotten in somewhere, they will sit there and go, you know what? Oh, this is how you break into a bank. This is how you break into a corner shop. This is how you break into a charity. This is how you break into, oh, a retail establishment. Because that's what happened with Marquis and the co-op and all over the retail server sector. It was like, oh, we know how to get in there and cause a lot of damage. And they spread it amongst their peers, shall we say. And so everybody starts chasing after supermarkets and trying to get passwords going. Why do mandates stop that? Sorry, updates stop that. Well, if it's because there was an old gap in an application, and we call them vulnerabilities, and we get reports from them going out all the time, then people know how to exploit them. So if you've got an old operating system, an old version of any sort of software, people will probably know how to get into it, break it, and nick your stuff. Keep it up to date. Security patches come around. Automate them if you possibly can. Most of your stuff does it automatically. Check to make sure that it does. It's as simple as that. Okay, in Windows, you've got that utility to use. Again, restart your computer as needed and what have you, but it will do it for you, which is really handy. Okay, I got a question in actually out with this, which was, should you use a virtual private network? Heck yeah. It's like just, you know, please. It can help, it protects everything. It protects your online activity. Computers that aren't connected to the internet never get viruses unless somebody physically puts them on your machine. So why should you not want to have a private network to keep people away from your internet traffic by basically translating it, encrypting it, so that you cannot double encrypt something. It's useless. It's really hard to decrypt something. It's hard no matter how good you are as a hacker. People don't like it. A VPN just says, you know what, I'm hiding my stuff until the person that I send it to reads it, and you can't do nothing about it. Loads of options here about how to install a virtual private network client. It may be something that you would do. It may be something which your technical team would do. I know that I'm operating from a virtual environment here and at work. Okay. Be cautious of phishing scams. I'm sorry that this is doing my, my online business no help whatsoever. I've been selling dodgy medication and, masquerading as a Nigerian prince for quite some time. And it's very lucrative. But I'm telling you, don't do this. But don't fall for it. And there's also a little resource in there. It's the Google phishing quiz. It's really good. And just run through that because it goes through all of the points which you should be thinking twice about any email, about answering it. Just give yourself that 2 or 3 seconds to think. Use the common sense approach of, right, is this really for me? Is this somebody I know? Is this something that I expect? And if it is, it's probably absolutely fine. If you've got any doubts whatsoever, contact the person concerned if you know them, and if it's somebody you don't care about or it seems unsolicited, I always feel perfectly free to just delete it without any further thought whatsoever. And I haven't missed anything important in many years. Okay, a couple of wee bits of information here. It's actually, I think doing the quiz is better, but check if somebody asks you to perform any sort of financial transaction, don't click a link or an instruction that's in an email. Check with the vendor, check with who you are going to actually do the transaction with. Don't check with anybody else. Never take it outside of that. And again, keep your computer updated. Use anti-phishing tools. There's still some of them work, some of them don't. To be fair, if you're being socially engineered, it's not going to be caught by anti-phishing tools because that's people trying to catch out. Be cautious of phone calls. I can be I found myself being very rude to somebody that was actually trying to help me with my car insurance. I kid you not. My son had written off a vehicle, a family vehicle. And they said they were from the insurance agency and could they have my bank details? And I was like, no, you can't, ever. And they were, but I'm from, and quite frankly, no. So I disconnected from the call. I went through directly to them, to the organization, got it all authenticated and did it that way. It took an extra minutes out of my life, but it could have been, lots of money that went to somebody that I didn't want it to. And I will take that time. I've mentioned about using two-factor authentication. What is it? There's loads to choose from. You can have physical security keys. You can have all manner of multi-factor authentication apps. You can use the recognition programs. Choose the one which is most appropriate to you, but please make sure that it's not the same as the other form of authentication that you use or similar in any way. That's all. So if you're using a password or a PIN to get into something, don't make it another PIN. That's all we're saying. There are so many there. If it's a text message, what have you, just choose one you like or choose one which your IT department support, but please choose one. Okay. Encrypt your data. I've mentioned this before, going through this, but not just what you're sending over the internet. Encrypt what's on your device. Loads of really good applications for doing that. It doesn't affect your daily life whatsoever. It just makes things harder for other people. People just can't nick it and use it. If you've got BitLocker, for example, installed, then they ain't getting nothing out of it. So please do these things. This takes me to the end of part one of the meeting, by the way, but it's just what I'm suggesting is if you follow these 8 stages of protection, you can greatly improve the security of your laptop. You're talking maybe taking a couple of hours to do this, maybe less if you're good with IT, but at the end of it, you should feel confident that actually, no, it's updating, it's got all the securities in there, I'm feeling pretty safe here, and or your IT department can do that on your behalf. But I hope with this couple of pages, you could actually do it yourself. Okay. 5 minutes before I go into the final stretch, Robin, is that fair? If anybody does want a comfort break, we come back at 7 minutes past. Let's call it 8. So I'm not that much of a pedant. And I'll catch up with you then. Thank you very much. Perfect timing and execution, Robin. 7 minutes past on the dot.
And I made a
Um,
cup of tea.
oh, excellent. Well, I can join you now because my vast cup of coffee has also been refreshed. Um, all going okay so far, and am I sharing something that's moving now? Yeah?
Yes, you are indeed.
Great stuff. That's 3 out of 3 so far. I'm so pleased. If everybody else is back, I'm quite happy to pick up because we don't want to go too much overtime or overtime at all if I possibly can. Right. Everybody in? Everybody back? Wheels down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're on. Right. How do I secure my organization? Well, quite frankly, live on your own in a cave and don't talk to anybody ever. I used to unplug my mum's computer every time I left the house because she was just a liability with it, quite frankly. Just pull the internet connection cable off the back, then with the days. You know, she cottoned onto it eventually, but I'll tell you what, she never had any viruses for 10 years. So, hey, go me. Uh, okay, I wasn't mentioned on the Christmas card list a couple of years, but you get over it real quick. For an organization, it gets complicated. It gets difficult, to be fair. It's not like just securing your own device, but actually, a number of these things are common to all organizations and should be followed. In fact, again, if you look at there's the mini guidance which is part of um, the foundation course. It basically says, you know what, here are 5 things you got to do. They're all mentioned here. So why do you want to do it? Exactly the same reason as you want to secure your own device. You do not want somebody stealing the organization's money. You don't want people stealing wages. You don't want people, I mean, that's what people go after. You don't want them stealing company secrets. You don't want them stealing your customers. So exactly the same rules apply here. What's the difference? Well, it's a corporate entity rather than an individual, but the rules are absolutely the same. So what do we want you to do? Well, I'm going to take you through it very quickly. You want to develop a cybersecurity plan and you want to train your employees. You want to keep your software up to date. Oh, does that sound familiar? I may have said it before. I will definitely say it again. Use strong passwords. Definitely use one. Use two-factor authentication. Oh, does that sound familiar? I hope so. Please make sure you have. Regularly back up important data. This will automatically be done on one device, but doing it for numerous devices, that becomes a bit more tricky. So make sure you're backing up your important data regularly. Um, Monitor your network. James, what's that? I hear you cry if you don't work in IT. And if you do work in IT, you think, well, I wish I didn't have to do that. You do have to do it. You have to monitor network traffic. You have to use tools to identify and respond to suspicious activity. I work in an area where there are nation states much bigger than the United Kingdom that are constantly monitoring every piece of activity that comes out of the universities and colleges with which I work because they want to see what research is coming out of it. They want to see if they can use it, steal it, which they do all the time, and it never ends. You may not be any different in the organization with which you work. Think of the internet, if your stuff isn't protected and unencrypted, as basically somebody shouting out of the window everything that you're doing. It's like sending postcards. Anybody that sees it at any point can sort of read it, find out what's on it. They can leave it be and keep it going, but they can read it and that information can be theirs. So monitoring helps to identify if somebody's trying to get into your devices, all the devices in the organization. It also helps to make sure that actually none of the employees are taking out huge amounts of information that they shouldn't be, which can also happen. Why? Well, it helps you to respond more quickly to a cyber attack before it can cause serious damage if you know it's coming and if you know the source. limit access to sensitive data is the next one, which is number 8. This should seem second nature to many of you. You don't put your bank codes on a postcard. Put it somewhere safe. And that's all we're saying here. Put it somewhere safe. Believe it or not, I know organizations that can quite happily work on just one of these, if you can see it, which is a USB encrypted pen drive, and they just back up their files and lock them in the safe overnight. Cost £7.99. Anybody going to break into that? They've got to break into the entire building. Yes, of course, there are immutable backups, there are cloud services. You can properly secure your device. We've got a few hints and tips on this sheet as well, but do it. Just think of that. Think of, oh, wait a minute. If it isn't on my computer when I leave it, how can anybody get it? They really will struggle. I'm telling that for nothing. Also, have a plan for responding to cyber incidents. So I've mentioned have a cybersecurity plan. That's to apply all of the bits that we're saying today. You know, so, well, take the list, have a look at it, say, oh, I'm going to do this. That'll be done tomorrow. Maybe some team are going to have to do this. Please let them crack on. I want it done by whatever date. But there's also things that you have to do when there is a cybersecurity incident and develop a plan for responding to cybersecurity incidents. Now, I do not have time to go into the detail of that at this moment in time. There's a few hints and tips and links here, but actually we hold a whole we prefer to run a tabletop exercise on this one, provide you with materials because it's the best way, because it's unique to you. But what would you do if your organization was attacked? For many of you, it is switch off your machine and let the technical support handle it. If you are the technical support, it's handling it, calling in the people that you need to assist with that, some third-party suppliers, but also informing the organization of what the problem is. This is the world's shortest critical incident reporting plan, but actually there's a really strong need to let people know what's going on and also to take heed of some of the legal requirements on reporting, etc. So you should have a plan for doing that, and you should have numbers on the wall or available to everybody in a place which has got nothing to do with your network or your computer for the emergency numbers that you're going to call if it's third-party support, if it's a team, if you have to report an incident. Again, there's guidance on that, not just here, but also on the foundation sheet, as it's called. And consider, especially if you're a small or medium organization, well, why should I do all this security malarkey? I'm not very good at it. Why don't I get somebody who I can trust? And it doesn't cost much more than a Microsoft service to do it for me. And they've already got authentication oozing from their ear holes. Well, why not? They are a very, very affordable way. And I know a lot of medium-sized organizations that do this that will, say, call, I don't know, Grant McGregor in Scotland or one of the strongest ones of it and say, can you actually host all of our systems for us? We'll just have virtual network set it up for us and the devices, and we'll just do our stuff on your computers. You secure it. You guys are safe. You know what you're doing. Us lot, not a clue. We're accountants. We don't do any of that malarkey. Consider where that would be helpful. If you're working in a technology field, obviously, probably going to want to keep your own kit on-prem. If you've got a very distributed workforce as well, this is actually really handy. So a couple of guidelines in there for considering that. That is our top 10. And you can see there's a bit more measures in this document. You've already got now, thanks to the fact that Robin's shared it with you and the materials. I'm not going to labour the point. We're going to take a very, very quick pause here. Is everybody comfortable so far that these will be helpful for smaller to medium organizations before I go into the howitzer of what to do if your organization's a bit big? Okay, in that case, if everybody is sitting comfortably, I'm going to show you, first of all, the Nightmare, which is a super duper spreadsheet which is used for assessment, and pretty much every single assessment company uses them. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to open it up. And I'm going for 4 out of 4 here. This is not part of the pack, Robin. This is actually something that's a wee bit big to share. Just drop it down. I'll go and push my sharing button. Is it at the bottom now? Yep. And it should look something like this. You start off, everybody, in any assessment with a lot of questions. We're going to focus on one example, just one row of this, and then I'll break it down going backwards. But a large organization, and if you're part of it, you'll be asked 2 to 4, maybe even 500 questions will be asked of that organization, and not just of your IT department, about how you handle your cybersecurity and its risk. What we recommend is that actually those questions, you need to get more out of them than just an answer. So in this example, we're using the PSCRF framework, which I mentioned earlier. Why? Because it's got things in it which you should all have. It has a question. Oh, that's great. Thank you very much. We really like to answer questions. It's got a scoring rating. How good are you at this? And there's a guidance about it. You know, very, very good. So 100%. You just give yourself a mark on that one. You have to be 100% to be compliant. How do I know if I'm good at it? This gives you the guidance for everything they would look at an audit. And all of the standards should do that. Not all of them do. It should say, right, if you've got your minutes of board meetings, if you're documenting your risk assessment process, if you are regularly reviewing them and using communications materials, and you're showing where you're spending your money, you are demonstrating that you have got a board level commitment to manage the risks arising from the cyber threat and from cyber threat. Clear, straightforward. People can check that and say, oh, if I've got all 5 of these, is that 100%? And the answer is yes, apart from one small caveat. They'll always have the action plan stuff here, what am I going to do, what have you. But this, prove it. So the first part was show me. The second part is prove it. And you can explain yourself in the customer notes. Any good auditor is then going to turn around and challenge that and say, no, don't just show me, prove it. Prove that your logs are working. Prove that they're secure. Prove that your firewalls are working. Because if they're not asking you that, if you're just doing a self-assessment, well, with the greatest will in the world, some people are trying to be over helpful. Some people are actually trying to, for whatever way, you need somebody, a third party, to turn around and say, you are actually doing it quite well, or there's room for improvement here. And that's how big organizations are assessed. I'm going to shrink this down to give you an idea of the scale of this assessment. There are 17 categories. You can just see a trail of questions. Right? And that goes right down to the likes of, have you got fire alarms fitted and have you got CCTV? It covers everything. But we are not going to go through all of that today. Oh, please don't leave the room in, in a feeling of dissatisfaction. That's what the advanced courses are for, to look at each of these dimensions in detail. But for this, what are we doing? Well, when you get the score, you can do stuff with it. And this is what you're trying to get. You're trying to get a score that tells you how good something is. And this is split into two columns. That doesn't matter too much because different standards do it different ways. This goes into two tiers. Tier one is that's standard practice. We expect you to be compliant with this. Tier two is this is good practice. This is advanced. It's really good if you've got it. Okay. But then it just groups them all up. So you get a score and averages it all out because it's very clever and does computer stuff. And it gives you a level of compliance. Now, of course, this one's going to be 100% compliance in every category because I filled it in and I lied about every single response. But that's not the point. The truth is that what we are doing is saying, right, we think we're good at this. You've told us what we've got to do or what we should be doing. And we've said, yes, we are. Oh, and wait a minute. We've shown you that. And you've said, prove it. And we've been able to prove it to your satisfaction. That tells us something useful. Self-assessment questionnaire does not have that value, right? So you can put that in here, but it can then start to do loads of really useful, helpful stuff. It can say, oh, I'm not quite sure. Where am I standing in this category? Well, it's right there, one page, and it's just one page. It's not big. It tells you where you are in all 17 of the categories. You can go in and say, oh, how am I doing in the easy stuff? Here's your scorecard. You want to have something physical, really, sorry, physically visual, which says, oh, right, well, okay, we're great at everything here. But suppose one of these were to come up as, oh, I don't know, I can change stuff around here. I have the power. So say I was put that down to one of these down to something like 50%. Oh, shockeroony, David. You could never happen. That'll never happen. Uh, uh, Immediately, that should affect the tier scorecard. And it's saying, oh, you're not doing so great here. And that will stand out like a sore thumb. So people can see it. You want everything to be in the green here for cybersecurity, preferably, but you really don't want it to be in the red. And to work this throughout a larger organization, you need to have something as simple and straightforward as this to be able to tell them. There are different ways to do it, different charts and graphs. Like we can show what we call the maturity posture. For those of you who work in cybersecurity or work in any assessed body, having it all in one page summaries is really, really handy. But you can also just tabulate that. And it's just showing this radar damage diagram. You better take a hold of your risk management. And it shows you it clearly. But what is maturity? Maturity is anti-risk. The better you are at something, the less risk you carry with it. So in each of these 17 areas on your report card, you are going to try and get yourself in the green. And you want to be able to go very, very quickly and point and say, that's what we're working on next. Because it's the most important. We're in the worst shape there. And then you go back to the summary and then you go back to the questions and see how well you're doing. So it's all linked in. And if you have got a security posture like this, and this is evidenced, and this is why we're very confident in the postures of the universities and colleges, is you've proven that you're in a good position. But also, even according to Microsoft's annual survey and report that comes out, you're covering 99.4% of all incidents, any type, all types of attack. And what about the last 5 or 6 of a percent? They've got very little to do with cybersecurity. We are then talking about insider threats, people that are, sharing information, WikiLeaks type people. only some of them with a nefarious purpose. We're talking about, and not so much in the United Kingdom. In fact, it's never been proven to have happened in the United Kingdom, but certainly in Spain, a lot of people kidnapped, believe it or not, who are actually physically coerced into giving up their passwords and giving them access to banks and building societies and money. And that's horrible. And many other countries in the world, I'm not picking out Spain. It's just their closest. No amount of cybersecurity is going to stop me from giving the first person that says, here's a photograph of your grandkids, and I'm going to do bad things to them if you don't give me your password. It's like, yep, here it is. Do what you want. I'm not even going to think twice about it. We're trying to keep this within the realm of the possible, the realm of the probable, and what you can do very, very quickly to actually, no matter what size of organization you have, secure things down. If it's small to medium, like I say, hopefully these cheat sheets that I've given out will help you get a quick run through. If you're working for a larger organization, deep diving into each of these areas, getting them evidenced, get the risk out there, know what your maturity posture is. You cannot rely on a survey alone for that or an audit alone, especially if the audit is not being done by trained cybersecurity personnel. And most audits are not done by trained cybersecurity personnel. With 2 minutes left on the clock, hopefully that has been a helpful set of sessions. And hopefully the materials which I have provided will be of value or use to you all. If you have any questions, you've been really, really well behaved, so thank you very much for that. I hope I haven't bored you, and I hope there's something in there which is of value to you. Feel free to PM myself or Robin. My details are in the packs anyway if you look hard enough.